I'd like to discuss something about improvisation. In my opinion, there's some things that you need to have in place to totally be free in your improvisation. Obviously, you have to know theoretically what's existing at any given moment. You have to know the prevailing chord, what your scale options are, and we've addressed those kind of things in many of my courses, and we're going to talk about it in some future lessons right now. But you also have to have the technical skill to execute whatever idea comes to mind. And that's an ongoing process, as is learning the theory. And then finally, you have to have your ears on. You have to be cognizant of what's going on sonically and make your choices that way and be musical. So what we're going to do now is talk about technical preparation for your fretting hand. And this is going to be rather demanding, and the whole idea is here for me to show you how to take a scale and develop exercises, which are not just dry exercises. They're going to help you hear things in terms of modes with a bass line, multiple voices, things like that. And it's also going to help you in your comping and your chordal work, because you'll have freedom to expand upon voices and play like a piano on the guitar. So I do want to forewarn you, there are going to be some things here that maybe you've never even thought about playing from a technical standpoint. They'll be very difficult. And if it's any consolation, I became aware of these probably, 30 years ago or 40 years ago. I was looking at things this way, and it takes a long time to develop your technique. These will be geared toward finger style. You could play them. I'm going to be playing with my fingers probably, but you could do this with a pick, hybrid picking. But obviously, finger style is going to open up more ideas for multiple voices. So don't get bogged down on that. The whole thing we're going to talk about now is how to take a scale and expand and get some ideas. Now, I've written out some actual exercises, which we'll expand on in a few minutes. But the first thing I want to do is have you pull up the examples, which are tab examples, examples 47 through 54. And you will notice how they consist of two voices. You have an upper voice, which is moving, either in eighth note triplets or in 16th notes. So we're going to group them that way, rhythmically either as triplets or as 16th notes. And then you have a lower voice, which is sustaining. Now, we've arbitrarily just chosen one pitch, one note, the 6th fret F on the 2nd string, to be our lower voice, which has to sustain. That'll be your challenge. And again, this is going to be different than just playing single note lines, but again, this will help you so much. It's sort of like running with ankle weights if you practice these exercises. Then we just play your straight single line work. Oh man, you're going to have some technique. It'll be really nice. And we are dealing with the scale form 2, which you see presented in diagrams 27, 28, and 29. It's labeled as Dorian, Mixolydian, and Ionian. So if you look at diagram 29, you'll see that we have an F Ionian mode, right where it's written, because it's scale form 2, because G is the lowest available note in the key of F. It's number 2 in this position. Let me rephrase that sentence. In 3rd position, G is the lowest available note, and that is the 2nd tone in the key of F. So your scale, let's just go ahead and run through the scale quickly. We're looking at diagram 29. And if you're thinking of it in the key of F, those numbers would assign to the key of F. G is the number 2, A is the 3, B flat is the 4, C is the 5, D is the 6, and you can either stretch out and capture that E on the 5th string, the 7th step of the scale, or it's also available back here. Then your F, G starts all over again. Okay? All right, now let's look at some examples here in the tab examples. Example 47. I want you to, I always tease my students, pretend you got some super glue or some Gorilla Glue or something on your ring finger and stick it on that F. Now make sure you put it where you want it, meaning nice upright posture, don't come in flattened, and you're going to need to keep your thumb in the back on these. I'm going to assume that maybe you're used to gripping the neck around or you're not comfortable with classical posture. So first off, let me backtrack for a minute. As always in the videos, almost always, I'm holding the guitar on my left leg. I've got a footstool underneath my left foot, so the guitar is up. I'm seated in classical posture, because if you don't have the guitar like this, you're not going to be able to comfortably get your hand under there. You probably want to be able to execute some of these exercises without having to go see your chiropractor. All right, so put your 3rd finger on that F, 6th fret of the 2nd string. Now, it's important that that note sustains. You will probably have a tendency to want to pull that finger up when things get difficult. So what do? You listen. In addition to watching, you must listen, because if you don't have an aural groove or goal, what you're trying to accomplish here, you won't be able to make music. All right, so we're going to keep this F sustaining. You can see that right inside that scale in diagram 29, that's number 1. Okay? Now, if you happen to be thinking in terms of Dorian, that would have been the flat 7. You can see diagram 27. If you were in Mixolydian, it'd be the 4th. So we'll get into that later on in terms of application. But for now, the main thing is that your 3rd finger's on that F. Okay, before you squeeze and clamp that note, just touch the note so that You're muting it. Then I want you to touch the remaining 3 notes on the top string, on the first string. The G, the A, and the B flat. Now, I'm not pressing down, so my hands relax. That's very important. If you start squeezing, you'll probably do things like this. You won't have the flexibility you need. Keep your hand loose and relaxed, and I want to stress this. I'll probably say it 10 or 20 times. Rest frequently on these exercises. If you need to rest after 3 seconds of trying to do an exercise, then do so. Don't be macho. You'll hurt your hand. You'll develop tension in your playing, and you won't be able to really play quickly because you've got to keep your hand relaxed. Seize those moments to relax. Economy of motion, conservation of energy are your goals. All right, so if you notice, for me to be able to comfortably access all 4 of those notes, I am not on the tip of my first finger, am I? I'm on the side of it. We don't have a camera angle that shows it along, like looking down the fingerboard, but you can see that I'm not like this. There is no reason for you to do that because all it does is strain the inside of your forearm, and it'll actually cause you to have some problems because you won't be able to anchor the first string because it's going to have a tendency to fly off the neck. And I do want to stress something. Now, the guitar I'm playing here has a neck width at the nut that's just a little bit bigger than 1 11/16. And you know, you guys have probably heard me say a lot of times, I'm not a big fan of narrow necks. If you've got a guitar you're playing right now that has a 1 5/8 inch nut width, you're going to have some problems with these exercises because you're just not going to have room. Ideally, if you practice on a classical with a 2-inch nut width, it's going to be great. Or a steel string guitar with 1 3/4, you're going to have lots of room. And another factor is, however the frets are dressed, if they fall off, you're going to have problems with some of these pull-offs. So make sure there's enough inset relief, meaning the first string isn't hanging right on the edge of the fingerboard. If you're playing on a guitar like that, it's going to frustrate you to no end. So make sure you've got an instrument that allows you to do these exercises. Okay, so let's go back to example 47. You're touching the F with your 3rd finger, the G with your 1st finger, the A with your 2nd finger, and the B flat with your 4th finger, right? All right, now all you're going to do to start off, squeeze all 4 notes, play the F and the B flat together. Just make sure that's clean. And we're going to skip the slurs for right now. Then pick your little finger up and play the A without disturbing the F. I want you to listen. Sounds like a vocal line or a horn part. We have 2 voices. One voice is moving, the upper voice is moving, and the lower voice is stable. Then repeat the same process. This is just to make sure you're clean when you're not slurring. Just practice playing any combination of those notes just to get your fingers warmed up. Nice and slow. This is not, I repeat, is not a speed exercise. It's a clarity and evenness exercise. Then as you get faster, you can practice any combination you want. That's actually what we're going to go through with all these little examples. In example 47, if you look at the upper voice, you will see that it's an 8th note triplet, and it's a descending triplet, meaning it's going B flat, A, G. If you pick it and you're using your fingers, you might practice using ring, middle, index, or alternate your index and middle. A lot of different fingerings over here. I'm not going to take time to go through that. But let's do the slurs now. So in this case, you start off with all 3 fingers down, actually all 4 fingers, right? Then you got to pull your 4th finger off to the 2nd finger. Now that's where you may run into some problems because you don't want to move your 3rd finger. If you pull your 3rd finger over, see how it did? What did it just do? It deadened the 1st string. Okay, so now you're going to do something that you're probably going to cringe. It's going to raise your eyebrow and you're going to say, what is Carlton doing now? I want you just for practice to push the F sharp. Push it up toward the 3rd string and practice your trill. Now, you don't want to play those because you're out of tune, right? But this is an exercise. Now, why would you want to practice pushing the other direction? Well, it's because you need to develop the skill and the independence that if you need to fight the tendency to pull in the direction of your pull-off, meaning down toward the ground or toward your knuckles, and actually push the other way. In actual performance, you're not going to bend it sharp, but if you've practiced bending it sharp, then when you relax, what's going to happen? You're going to stay in tune. Okay? So that's the first part. You could spend some time on just getting that clear, but I don't want you to work for perfection on this before you move on, because you've got to tackle these exercises bit by bit, but you've also got to put them together and get them rolling, okay? All right, so now we have the second component of that triplet, the pull off of the A to the G. If you have a problem with pulling your third finger over into that first string, what are you going to do? You're going to hold it over there, and you're going to practice bending it. Okay? Then you're ready to start the whole exercise. So let's start the whole exercise. You've got all 4 fingers down. You play the first 2 notes together, the F and the B flat. Pull off to the A, pull off to the G. And then to start it over again, you must hammer your 4th finger. Then you have to prepare your 2nd finger, and you repeat the process. So it is as follows. Preparation, initially, of all 4 fingers down. Play those 2 voices. Pull, pull, hammer, prepare your 2nd finger, and then repeat the whole process. There's your exercise. Now, if you practice that exercise, then you try to play it without your ring finger down. It'll be like the analysis or the analogy I said of running with ankle weights and taking the weights off. You'll say, wow, it's easy to play because you're holding a finger down. That's the premise of all these exercises. You're standing on a note. And you'll do it with different fingers as we do and do some variations of these. But that is example 47. You have 2 ways of playing. You can just play every note. However you choose. And let me grab a pick so, if you wanted to see what it's like with a pick. There I am using hybrid picking to start it. Or I could strum the 2 voices together and then use alternate picking for the triplet. Make sense? So you've got some variations of things you could do right there. That's pretty much it for example 47. Excuse me, but make sure you spend some time on that. Now, as you practice, this is how I'm going to close this particular lesson. And keep this in mind. We're just talking about fretting hand preparation here, right? Some exercise models that are going to work this fretting hand, but they're also helping you ingrain the scale, the shape of the scale, and the notes and the scale degrees as you do all these reps. So don't turn off the part of your brain that's analytical, where you could be thinking, okay, it's a B flat, an A, and a G, and this is an F. Oh, so if I'm playing over the 2 chord, let's look at diagram 27. If you're playing over the G minor chord, the 2 chord in the key of F, you can see the red numbers corresponding to your G minor arpeggio. There's your chord form. So you'd say, oh, okay, so if I was playing this lick over a G minor, my lick would be, it'd sound like the... Now, you notice what I've done. I've gone ahead and put a bar in there. I'm kind of jumping the gun. I don't want you to do that yet. I mean, wait for a while. We're going to move into that. But that helps you hear it that way, or practice playing it over the track. So let's go to our Latin track here. And you're going to have problems probably. I'm playing a solid body guitar and I'm on 2 single coils, so I don't have a whole lot of fat gain going on. It's a little thin. I was going to use a jazz box, but the problem with the jazz box is I don't have as much room. It's on shorter scales, 24 3/4, 25 1/2. So I wanted to have some room. Ideally, I'd like to be doing these on a classical guitar for you because then I could really dig in. But the point is, when you play these licks over the jam tracks taking you from G minor to C to F, a 2-5-1 progression, according to the bass line. And that'll help you hear these lines in different references in terms of what the prevailing chord is. And then you could expand upon that because remember, you've got 7 different chords in the key of F. But I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. The main thing here is to work on this exercise. And then, you want to practice it in all positions. We're staying in the key of F. So for the purposes of these videos here, we're going to stay in the key of F. We're in scale form 2, and that's what example 47 is. All right, now in the following examples, I'm going to go a little quicker on these because you don't have to spend as much time explaining it once you've gotten the concept, hopefully. So let's look at example 48. Example 48, what's the difference from example 47? Instead of it being descending triplets, it's ascending triplets. Okay? So, what's the difference? Well, as far as setup, absolutely no difference whatsoever. The only difference is how you execute it. You're going to start off playing the F and the G together, and then it's a series of hammer-ons. But then, once you're up on that B flat, you'll have to get your second finger up out of the way. So that's your preparation move. So it's F and G together, hammer the A, hammer the B flat, get your second finger out of the way, and then start over again. Okay, that's example 48. Well, let's look at example 49. Example 49 falls into the 16th note category. The reason being, even though we're just playing 3 different notes on the first string, we're going to be descending and then ascending back up. So here it is. You start again with all 3 fingers down, or excuse me, I keep thinking to the first string, all 4, obviously. Okay, so you play the F and the B flat together, pull off to the A, pull off to the G, hammer the A, hammer the B flat, then you just start all over again. Now, watch what I'm doing with my picking hand. The other strings can ring in sympathy, and I don't want to hear that, especially I'm playing in very low volume, real clean, not a lot of gain. Even if I had gain, it'd be a problem. So after you strike the notes, it would be advisable to mute your other strings, and that's accomplished by simply planting your index finger on the 4th string, your middle finger on the 3rd string, and then your thumb's going to be between the 6th and the 5th strings. And the 2 strings on top, you could have played them with middle and ring, index and middle, thumb and any finger, whatever you want. And what happens if you're playing with a pick? Well, you know your muting technique. For any of you who have seen any of my videos, you know that I'm always talking about muting with the picking hand. You put the pick in an upstroke position against the 3rd string. Side of your thumb is muting the 4th string and the 5th string, and then your thumb, not thumb, but heel of your hand back here, is muting the 6th string. So that way, your test is this. The only 2 strings that should be able to ring would be the 1st and 2nd strings. So, and I haven't talked about rhythm a whole lot here. Is rhythm important? You better believe it is. If you're playing your triplets, play along with a metronome. Make sure you're going tick, 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 that it's really clean. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3. If you're playing 16ths, it's 1 E and a 2 E and a ta, 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 ta. If you're not practicing good rhythm, you're not practicing good technique. Chops don't just mean speed. Chops mean controlling your rhythm, your dynamics, your articulation, all of the above. So don't neglect your rhythm. All right, let's move on to example 50. Example 50 is just the reverse of it. Oh, excuse me, no, it's not. It's actually a pedal tone lick where the G right here is going to be repeated. So you go. Okay, that's example 50. Let's go to example 51. I don't have my glasses on, that's why I can't see here. All right, so on example 51, the G is the pedal tone, and it's the reverse of 50. You might say, what's the difference? Well, what you start on can sometimes affect, these 2 examples are basically the same exercise, but, and you could say, well, I need to practice starting on the A. And that would be true. I didn't write that one down, but that's being thorough and saying, if I just practice something one way, and I think I know it, I might know it, but I only know it that one way. So here you go. Example 50, you're starting with the G. Example 51, you're starting with the B flat. And then one I don't have written is starting with the A. So they extrapolate from what I've given you, get some more exercises. All right, let's move to the next one. Example 52. We're back to triplets. And I want to talk about how I organize triplets. To me, a triplet can fall into 3 categories. It could be a triplet of the same note, same pitch. So if I went, there I'm parking on one string and I'm playing it. So you can't slur that, can you? It would have to be played with fingers or with a pick. Because if you're going to repeat a note, you've got to keep restriking it. Now, if you have a triplet with 3 different notes, let's look at examples 47 and 48. That was an example of descending triplets, 3 different pitches, right? Or ascending, 3 different pitches. But then here in example 52, we have triplets which involve 2 different pitches. We're going to analyze these in a future lesson here in just a few minutes, and we'll go more in depth about how to organize your patterns that you practice, because it just seems to work. There aren't that many different patterns, and you just plunk them in there, and then when you practice, make sure that you have prepared yourself technically for it. All right, let's move on. We need to do example 53. 53, and I'm going to ask you a question. Why would example 53 be more difficult? I don't even like to use that word, but present a little more of a technical challenge than example 52. Well, if you look at example 52, you'll notice that if we just view in terms of fingers, the notes that are moving on the first string, you're going 1, 2, 1. That's your first triplet, and then your second triplet is 2, 4, 2, and then it's just repeated. So you're going 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, right? In the course of playing the 2 triplets, the whole pattern actually, how many times did you use your little finger? Used it 1 time, right? Let's look at example 53. In the course of playing 2 triplets, 6 notes on top, how many times do you use your 4th finger? Use it twice right there. Because the pedal tone, the note that's repeated in the triplet, would be the higher pitched note. So that is more demanding. So which ones are you going to practice more? Probably the one that's easier, right? Wrong answer. You don't want to practice the one that's easier. You want to have your technique to where it's balanced. So make sure that you spend time on 53 and you don't avoid it, and don't default to example 52 because it's easier. Okay, our final example, and I've organized these in terms of level of difficulty from not so difficult to your most difficult one. I call example 54 the governor. I've used that term before because, you know, if you rent a U-Haul truck or something like that, generally they have a governor on there and won't let you go any faster than what, 55 miles an hour or something like that. So here, the governor, which we just discussed, would be that weakest finger, your 4th finger. It'll keep you from blazing because how many times in the course of this 16th note pattern will you use your 4th finger? You'll use it twice, right? Because you're going to go. So when you start going faster, you will notice how it'll cook your hand. And make them really powerful. Final thing I'm going to say about these slur exercises. Now, I've got 10s on this guitar, but if I'm playing on a classical, I've got the action up high, a concert classical, I can dig in. Or if I'm playing on a steel string, I've got 12s or 13s, or my jazz box, I've got 14s or 15s. I can really dig in, and it's good training. Early on, I said to relax your hand, but there's a time and a place when you're training, when it's like going to the gym. You're not going to get stronger if you're just putzing around with light weight. So you've got to push yourself. You've got to challenge yourself. So once your posture is intact, go ahead and squeeze much harder than you would have to execute it. Now, intonation would go out the window, and then you relax. I tell my students frequently, I'll do an example of this, where I'll say, oh, let's shake hands. And a limp handshake would be 1 on a scale of 1 to 10. Then 10, I'll say, squeeze my hand as hard as you can. That's 10. So while we're doing that, I'll say, okay, go to 5, go to 6, go to 2, go to 7. Then I'll say, okay, let's go all the way down to 1, and I want you to gradually, incrementally go up to 10. Then come all the way back down. Now, the point of that exercise would be to experience all the levels of muscular exertion. You want to practice the same way here if you want to really have a virtuoso, dependable fretting hand. Because there are times and places where you'll want to play harder, times when you want to play softer. If you're always relaxed, that's also not going to, if you're practicing super light and relaxed in your music room at home, what happens when you get out on a gig and something's wrong, the amp's blown up, or you can't hear yourself? You're going to want to play harder. If you're nervous or if the band's falling apart, who knows? So you want to be able to just warm up by getting pretty physical, and then you can back off. So experience all the range of muscular exertion when you practice these exercises. In our next lesson, we're going to go in depth about analyzing these patterns, and it'll help you organize anything you have to play from a technical standpoint.